Yes, welcome to Playback. I'm Brandon.
I'm Nate.
We are music producers, and this is the show where we take turns picking albums to discuss. And this week, Nate has picked Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart and his magic band.
That's right.
Yes. So, Nate, okay, let's start here. What is Trout Mask Replica?
So, Trout Mask Replica is probably one of the more challenging pieces of music in the entire rock canon that we have. It's kind of universally regarded as like a masterpiece, like a perfect record. But if you were to listen to it, I think that you would have anyone's first time listening to it, you would have major problems with that assessment because it is a record that was made in a way to sound intentionally sporadic and random, and sounding it was made in a way that sounds like people picking up their instruments for the first time in their lives and playing stuff like playing things that like they have no idea how to play music, but they're like making a record. That's what it sounds like. But the genius of this record is the fact that it was written that way intentionally and performed and was like repeatable. So it's this crazy, almost like free jazz, blues, garage, mishmash, like really psychotic sounding music, but was actually intentionally written to be that way. It's not improvised. There is no off the cuff playing or anything like that. This was like all rehearsed. It was rehearsed very specifically to sound this way. Yeah. And that in lies the genius of the music, is that it's not this sporadic random thing. It has that effect on you, but that's not what it is. What about you? What would you say? What the fuck is this record? Like for someone who's never heard this before?
That is the question. So yeah, it came out in 1969. So Captain Beefheart, it's from California.
Yeah, Glendale guy.
Yes, he was born in Glendale, California, which is like a suburb of Los Angeles, which is where we live. We don't live in Glendale, but So if you're familiar with Frank Zappa, you know he's a bit more of a more well-known figure. Captain Beefheart is a person who's friends with Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa produced this album, did all the technical where he recorded it. You know, financed it. Wow, I didn't even know that.
Well, I don't think it cost that much money, but
yeah, and like you said, this album is famous for being weird. It's famous for being like complicated to a unbelievable degree.
Unbelievable being like an operative word there. Like you will not be able to believe your ears when you first hear this.
Yeah, and that's what it's famous for. So it's known as being like the hardest album to understand that has ever been made. Yeah, and it's like a rite of passage kind of thing. It's like a party trick kind of album where, like, you know, people who are familiar with it will suggest it or offer it or share it with someone who's never heard it before, and like
you'll think they're playing a joke on you.
Right. And when they show it to you, or when they tell you to go listen to it, they'll be like waiting, smiling, laughing to watch your reaction. You know what I mean? Like the first time that you show a friend some like freaking crazy movie or something, and you just like watching their face. I can't wait to see how they're going to react when they hear this shit, you know? And it's just had that status and that reputation for, you know, for that long. It came out in the late 60s, and it's the product of like hippies that are so bizarre and so weird that they're like too weird to be hippies, like to be part of the mainstream hippie movement. They're too hippie for the hippies.
Yeah,
you know,
it is really like, and there's a reason I would make this comparison, which we'll get into later. it really is like if Charles Manson and the family made like one of the greatest art rock records ever made. Like it is exactly like that, because that's pretty much what was happening when they were making this.
And we can get into this more later, because the story of the group of people, how it was made and when they made it, is like possibly the most interesting aspect of this album, and we'll deep dive into it.
Possibly, and yet I would argue the music itself, when you dig into the music and you pull it apart, you extricate how weird it is, and you understand what they did, it is... Dude, I love culty shit, and I love Manson and all that. I'm like fascinated by all that stuff, and so that alone is part of what like led me to pick this, is because I just read a really fantastic book about Charles Manson called Chaos by Tom O'Neill. Separate topic, but like fantastic book, and really, I've been in kind of that headspace, and I just thought this would be fun to do. You know, for that reason, because it's that all that stuff is so fascinating to me, and I thought for sure the music would just be like, oh man, like it's just gonna be funny watching Brandon like torture himself, like, and we're gonna come on here and we're probably gonna hate it and we're not gonna get it, you know. But after really spending some time with this record, I would counter that, like, as I came to this wanting to pick it because of how it was made, but really digging into the music part of it, it is honestly almost just as interesting to me, which I was not expecting. Like, that like the way they did this is fucked up because of how they had to make it and record it and stuff. But like what they were able to accomplish is like unbelievable, like from like a musical standpoint. So.
Right. So then, and that is like the other important sort of aspect of the background of this to understand, is that Captain Beefheart basically kept his band members like locked up for an extended period of time in like very poor conditions in a way that really, really resembles like the way that, you know, a 60s hippie cult like the Manson family used to live. Yeah. And
it's like, I'm surprised nobody like died or was murdered or something during the making of this. Like, honestly, like I'm really surprised. Like, it really feels like these guys were like, a few more weeks of this shit, somebody would have fucking killed someone. Like, I don't understand how it wouldn't have gotten there. And it kind of almost did. Like, he was really, really violent and abusive to his band. It's like scary to think about. But
yep, mental, physical, verbal abuse going on, emotional abuse going on. And like I said, we'll deep dive into that aspect of it, because that is one of the two like most interesting aspects of this album. And like you said, the other one is the actual music itself, which is famously
challenging.
Famously challenging. Sorry. Sometimes I have to hit my microphone to make it keep working. Famously challenging to understand. And so it sounds like for you this time through, like you sort of like reached a new, because you had heard this album before. You're the one who picked it. I'd never listened to it before, not even once. Yeah. But it sounds like for you sort of reached like a next level of sort of getting the music and what's happening, right? So
I did.
What were your, when we sat down to listen to it for this episode, what were your impressions of it?
So I'd only heard this. I heard this once in college, and it was one of those things where it was like, it's like I got to Berkeley, the music school in Boston, and I was probably like 20, and one of my friends, great friend of mine, put this on, and I really did think it was a joke, and I kind of thought like, oh, this is like they're all gonna sit around and just like watch me like suffer through this, because it's like because it's not good. It's not a good record. It sounds like shit. It's awful to listen to, really, if you don't know what it is. Like,
the definition of the word cacophonous.
Yeah.
Cacophony.
Absolutely.
Meaning like unpleasant sound.
Yeah.
Like, you want to know what that means? Put this on.
Put this on.
What cacophony is.
Yeah. Chaos, just chaotic. And I just kind of thought, I don't know. I thought it was like a joke, you know? And then, but you know what? Then I got into a lot of his other music and I loved it. And a lot of his other music, it's fully informed by like the style that he established on Trout Mask. So I always kind of looked at it as like this missing link in my love for Beefheart, because I do love like Dock at the Radar Station. I love Safe as Milk. I love Ice Cream for Crow. Like I love those albums. I always have. But I always just looked at Trout Mask as just like, well, I don't know if I'll ever get that one, and I don't want to listen to it. So listening to it this time, all these years later, I think this was probably the second, third, fourth, fifth times I've ever heard it. Like the first time I listened to it, it was wild. I put it on. For the first time I listened to it for this, I put it on while I was evacuating LA because of the fires.
Yeah, that's right.
And I threw it on. At time
of recording, those crazy LA fires were what, 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
2 weeks ago today is when they started, yeah.
So I put it on while and I thought, this is perfect. This is one of the most chaotic, scary moments I've ever had to live through in my life, where I'm like exiting my home to get away from these fucking fires, which, by the way, we're not in it. Me and Brandon are safe. We're not in danger of those fires or anything like that. But I did leave anyway.
Nate, where Nate lives, we live in different parts of LA, but where Nate lived, he needed to evacuate.
Yeah, it was mostly just for air quality, like smoke reasons. Like it was just unbearable. Yeah. But my stuff is safe. But yeah, so I was like, I'm driving and there's fire engines whirling past me, and fucking I'm stuck in traffic, and there's literally, I can see on the horizons just like multiple fires and smoke everywhere, and it was like insane. And I was like, dude.
And you were listening to Trout Mask Replica during this happening?
During this. I'm like, dude, I'm putting on fucking Trout Mask right now. And it was fucking amazing because it really did enhance how afraid I was. It really did.
Awesome. I'm so afraid. This rules.
It really, it was scary. It was really scary. And you were enjoying how scary that was? No, I did. While I was listening to it then, I was like, oh my God, this is I was texting you. I was like, this is a fucking chore, dude. Like, I think I have maybe one more listen in me. There's no way. I don't know why I picked this shit. Like, even then, like 2 weeks ago, I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I regret like picking this. Like, this is really rough. And then I listened to it again at home, and I was like, wait, what? I think I like this. And then I think I've listened to it maybe 2 more times since then, and I'm fully on team. Like, this is, not only is this good, this is great. This is fucking like unbelievable music. That I'm still like trying to parse how and why I've arrived there, but like it's penetrated something in me where I'm like, oh man, like this hits on a type of surrealist, bizarre art that like I really like in other art forms. I've just never quite had the fortitude to sit through a piece of music like this. It's very challenging, but yeah. So my impression this time is just that I actually like it. I can't believe I'm at the point where I like it. And I think if you listen to this, you're going to think we're being really like, I don't think maybe you'll have trouble believing us when we say that we like it, but I don't know. But what about you? Have you ever heard this before this?
I had never heard this album before, but I was aware of its existence because I think the first time that I became aware that it existed was when I was looking at the Rolling Stone 500 greatest albums ever made lists, you know, and it's like
it's number like 60, right, or 59 or 60, I think.
I can't remember where it is, but it's definitely in the top 100.
It is.
It might even be near or above 50, possibly.
No,
somewhere around there.
I saw it. I remember. It's like 60 or something like that.
60, okay.
Yeah.
But when you consider the 500 best albums ever made, and you look at what, I can't remember what number 500 is, but you look at the ones that are at the bottom of that list, they're fucking amazing.
Right.
Like, all 500 are like masterpieces. Yeah. Because thankfully there are that many, great musicians making music in the world. And this one was that far up, and I think it was the first one on the list where I hadn't heard of the artist and I hadn't heard of the album, and I was like, wait, what the fuck is that?
Right.
And I'd never seen this picture, the album cover of, you know, the guy wearing a Trout mask, you know, making this little hand gesture
with some kind of wild top hat thing going on too.
Yeah,
I don't totally, and that's Beefheart too. It's Beefheart wearing a Trout.
Those are his clothes that he would wear. So if you look at the cover of this album, there's Captain Beefheart wearing this hat, wearing this green, like kind of overcoat thing, and some sort of like you know 60s like ascot type scarf, whatever the hell. And the only aspect that's in this photo that is not a part of his regular like attire that he would wear every day and all the time is the fish mask.
Yeah.
Like those are his clothes and his hat that he would just fucking wear.
Yeah.
And this is the way that he and his friends and his whole group dressed, you know, they were just out there, you know, super psychedelic dudes. But yeah, so I saw this on the list of the greatest albums, and I, you know, each one has a little paragraph, just a little blurb about it, and it talked about how super experimental and super complex and cacophonous and just chaotic sounding it is. And it mystified me. Why is it so high? Why is it listed above these other albums? You know, like the ones that are ranked below it.
Probably stuff we've covered. Like it's probably above Graceland. It's probably above like all kinds of like classic records. Like like beautiful records.
and every once in a while you'll notice it mentioned in the, you know, internet, just in the world discussion of music that's out there. And I notice every single time that it's mentioned with reverence. It's mentioned with respect, and it's mentioned like, and it was just so curious and like intriguing. Why would a seemingly chaotic mess of an album, as it's described, why would it be regarded so highly? So, you know, when you pick this album, I was like, okay, it's time.
You also deduced what I was going to pick, remember, on our bonus episode.
Yeah, because you said it's considered one of the best ever, and it's like painful and hard and not enjoyable to listen to. And so I just deduced like, well, it must be this one.
There's like there may be like 2 or 3 albums that would apply to, but none more so than this one. Yeah. So yeah.
And I had a similar experience to you where, first time through, it's like, okay, this is just like okay,
it's a nightmare.
This is just going to be a double album worth of nightmare. And then I, at some point or another, I crested over the top of a hill of like, I enjoy this sound.
Yeah.
Like I'm liking the feeling of listening to this, you know, in a similar way, in a similar sort of enjoyment response that I get to listening to any other music that I like.
I think it's like even like heightened beyond that. Like it's like so a music in its own universe that like the emotion I get from listening to it is like, it's unlike any other experience. Like once you get to the point of actually liking it, it's like, I will not get this from any other piece of music. Like
exactly. And I think that's what makes the praise of it go so singularly to this one album, is because he basically like invented a new style of music. Yeah. And neither he nor any other person has made another album of this style of music. So like, you know, so, you know, if you don't know, Nate and I, our main style of music that we make and that we listen to, or at least that I listen to, is reggae, right? And like old school, you know, reggae from Jamaica from the 60s and the 70s and the early 80s. That's
you can dance to it. You can sing along with it. It's like,
and for me, there's a certain vibe and a certain feeling and a certain just sonic like environment that just feels good to be in, that I like about reggae music. And so, but the thing is that there's lots of different artists and lots of different albums, and even ones that I still haven't heard yet, where I can go to that musical place and enjoy being there. But once you like feel an enjoyment for the musical vibe that is on Trout Mask Replica, you can only listen to it again. There's no other. There isn't any other recordings that you can listen to enjoy that feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're right. It's really weird.
Yeah. No, you're totally right.
So some of the other sort of first impressions that hit me. So first of all, I'm so glad that when you picked the album and you told me to go listen to it, the first thing that Nate did was you explained to me two important things to know about it. And one was that all of the music is written and it's intentional and none of it is improvised.
Yeah.
I am so glad that you told me that before I listened to it.
It's a really key factor to like understanding it.
It's everything.
It's
everything.
Yeah.
Because when you hear this album, if it's improvised, it's one thing.
If
it's not improvised,
if this is improvised, it's fucking stupid. There are parts of it that are fucking stupid. If they're just dumb.
Exactly.
Dumb, and I get why people would hate it, but it's not.
Right. If this is improvised, this is not the number 60 greatest Rolling Stone rated greatest album ever made. If this is improvised, it goes into a bin where a lot of other music, or a lot of other recordings and a lot of other music is, right? The world is full of like
bad
people
music.
who, right? Yeah, a lot of like stupid shit gets funded and gets recorded and gets released, and this would just go into that pile. But if this music is not improvised, if every note is a learned, intentional part, this is something else entirely.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what this is. And so, it really helped. That was the key to the doorway into being able to being able to appreciate what these guys are playing on these recordings.
And you said there's two. Well, I don't even remember what I told you. There's two things.
The second thing was like the culty aspect of the way in which the musicians learned it, because they're not. So when they recorded the album, they didn't sit down there with sheet music like how musicians in an orchestra do it. Right? They put it in front of them and they play. They read along with what they're playing to assist them in their accuracy. No, they did it when they recorded these tracks. It was all from memory because of how
intensely they rehearsed.
Repetitions, exactly. How intensely they rehearsed this, how many repetitions, how many times they practiced it over and over and over to be able to play it at will.
Yeah.
And it's like when you compare that to the complexity and the difficulty that anyone's brain has to like keep these notes straight in your mind, and the amount of it's not just like 5 or 6 songs, it's all right.
I mean, that's another thing for listeners to keep in mind if you've never heard this before. Not only is it really like dense and cacophonous and like hard to get through and like hard to listen to, it'd be one thing if this was like a normal album length. This is 28 songs. This is very nearly. No, it's 80 minutes long. Almost 80 minutes, right? It's like almost the length of like a fucking movie. And it is this the whole time. It's like once you open up the album with Frownland, it's like, that's it. Get ready for fucking 80 more minutes of this. Like that's what it is.
Yes. So, and so that was the second thing that you explained to me, and so that's definitely the way to listen to it, is to understand the context, understand what exactly
you're getting into,
what exactly these people did to make the thing that you're listening to. And just a couple other first impression things that hit me. First of all was how not experimental the production of the album is. The actual technical aspect of the album.
It's presented very as it is. There's
completely, like
almost completely. The bassoon stuff, they sent that through a plate. I noticed that.
Oh, okay.
there's a reverb
thing that has some reverb on it.
Yeah. That's it though.
So reverb, by the way, this is reverb on my voice. So this is a spring. My voice is going through a metal spring.
Yep. Can hear it. Imagine a slinky. That's like what Brandon's voice is going through.
Yeah, the electrical signal of my voice is going through a metal slinky, and you're hearing what that sounds like. So the reason why I bring that up is before I listened to it, sounds like that. So I knew that this came from the late 60s. This is peak psychedelic, hippie tripped out, whoa, hey man, weird, wild, far out man music time. This from California. You know what I mean? This is, I knew that this was from that like community, from that ethos.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, this is not, when you say it's LA, yeah, but this is not like Mamas and the Papas and Neil Young and the Byrds. It's like, because that was happening concurrently in LA, but these guys were not part of that scene.
What I mean is that I hadn't heard it yet, but I knew that this music came from that time and place.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Time and place of history. Mm-hmm. And I knew that this is famous for being a bizarre album. So what I was expecting was like, Beatles Revolution 9, just like tripped out experimental studio tricks and like, let's fucking play tapes backwards and let's put crazy flanging effects and choruses and swooshing sounds and reverb on everything and mess with tape delay,
like a collage, like a sound collage or something.
I was expecting the actual production of the sound to be experimental, and it's the opposite.
That's a great comparison, actually, comparing this to probably the more accepted piece of like wacko out there cacophony music. Revolution Number 9 is probably the most famous, the single most famous avant-garde piece of music. And yet, in my opinion, this is so much cooler and so much deeper and more complex than anything in Revolution Number 9 for exactly what you're illustrating, which is that song is essentially a sound collage with a bunch of studio tricks. It's not, that wouldn't have been necessarily like super hard to make, super hard to decide to put that on your record, but like,
and the Beatles weren't the only people who were getting experimental with the actual technological process of making your recording that you then release to people. It was like a very, late 60s thing. Like a lot of artists were getting into that.
Hendrix was super weird, like in this a similar vein. Yeah.
And the list goes on and on. Lots of people, Pink Floyd, too many to mention. And they were using that as one of the ways to make a experimental, surreal product, artistic product to put out, to be making this surreal statement. But it just amazed me that Trout Mask Replica uses almost none of the recording and the technology as the surrealness of the work. It's all in what the people are playing is the surreal and experimental part.
Absolutely.
It's not the effects and not the way in which the recording is then manipulated and played back. It's really fascinating to me.
That's a really great. I love that observation. I like appreciate that observation actually, because what it does for me is it couches this in a place of sophistication that is so far above all that other stuff that people were doing that is like surreal, whatever. Like this is so beyond like impressive in comparison to those. And some of those are really cool. They're like neat, but it's essentially like musical, like masturbation sometimes.
Seriously.
Like,
it's really amazing because like the degree to which he is Captain Beefheart and the rest of the guys who made this were able to make a product that is more surreal than those other competitors without using any manipulation of what is coming off of their instrument.
Yeah.
There were like no effects on this recording. It's like almost completely dry. Not completely. Like you said, there are some examples where there's light amounts of reverb.
We need to crescent your microphone Trout Mic Replica for how challenging it is. Trout Mic Replica strikes again.
Trout Mic Replica, the most challenging mic to work with. But they're able to make a product that is more surreal without using any effects, and it like in comparison makes all those studio tricks seem like a crutch.
Yeah,
like they're cheating. Like they're taking something that is not surreal and making it seem surreal,
right?
When it actually isn't.
Well,
whereas Captain Beefheart did something that actually is surreal, and then did not need to dress it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like maybe that stuff is surreal. Maybe that stuff does trip you out when you listen to it, because it is. It's not to disparage other art or other music necessarily, but this is just on a whole nother level. Like it really is. Like it's hard. It's honestly, I love the comparison, but even that, it's kind of hard to compare it to this. Like compare that stuff to this, like something like Revolution #9, because the Beatles never attempted something like this. Like, you know what I mean? Jimi Hendrix never even attempted something like this. Like the closest approximation they had was their weird studio trick experimentation type stuff. And it's not even in the same fucking playbook, really. Like,
right.
You know?
Yeah, it's a playbook that I didn't even consider as an option until I listened to this. Because before listening to this, and we will also, later on in this discussion, get more detailed into what exactly musically is happening here, and we'll get more into it. But this, like, moved the bar for me and changed, like, where the line is of, like, what actually is something experimental to do with your musical notes and your rhythms and what you're playing. Because before listening to this, to me, what was complex was like prog rock stuff, like Yes, and even like Tool, or what Frank Zappa's music would be like, and this takes it so much farther that it makes
maybe as far as you could go, like
maybe. But certainly farther than other people. Yeah. To the point where it has made me realize how conventional all music is, actually, including music that we regard as being bizarre, and as being unconventional. This album has made me really realize, like, how narrow the confines are in which all the music that we make and listen to really is, and how many rules, even the strangest of music, how many rules that really really follows. Yeah. I mean, even like for example, since the time when I was a teenager, I've been a really big fan of Tool. I love that band. Okay. And one of the things that they're famous for is using polyrhythms. They're not the only ones. Lots of prog rock bands, progressive rock, progressive metal bands
But
use polyrhythms.
those polyrhythms are like, they're set in like math. It's like mathematical, like everything clicks in and fits in like a way. And Danny Carey is like fucking, it's a math equation half the time. It's really great. It's cool. Math is beautiful, but
so what a polyrhythm is when two of the instruments that are playing at the same time are like doing a different number of beats across the same period of time.
yes.
Right. So normally the normal thing to do is the drums, the bass, the guitars, everybody is counting in fours.
We should do one.
1, 2, 3. Well, on Zoom, the delay will mess us up because we will be hearing something.
You know what, though? It'll be messed up, but it will become a Captain Beefheart polyrhythm. I think we should do it.
No. It won't, because Captain Beefheart's polyrhythms make more sense than randomness. They're not random.
No, it's true. It's true, but they're slightly out of sync sometimes.
Okay, we'll get into that because sort of. Not really. Sort of. Not really.
Okay, I derailed you. Sorry.
That's okay. So what a polyrhythm is when... So what's normal is everybody's counting in fours all together, right? But what happens if like only the drummer is playing while everyone else is doing that, if only the drummer is playing something that is based in 5 beats instead of 4. And so during, like that.
And what happens is since the length of time of those measures are different, what happens is you start to hear music that like syncs up at seemingly, it feels kind of random, but it's like it syncs up at a weird place where it normally wouldn't if everyone is just like together 1, 2, 3, 4,
exactly.
right? It's like all of a sudden now your multiple parts, they're playing different lengths of music. They sync in weird places, right? That are unexpected.
The point of symmetry, the point at which the loop comes back around again shifts.
Yeah.
And so you get this kind of like kaleidoscope, sort of like a spirograph,
surreal
type thing. But it is highly ordered. It's it makes like a mathematical and very ordered pattern. You're making a pattern in time, right? Rhythm is the key part about rhythm in music is time, right? So when you offset something like that and you start playing a polyrhythm where there's more than one rhythm happening at the same time, you're making a new pattern that will loop around in an interesting way or in a different way in time. So Tool is one of the most well-known bands to play with this little thing and do that in their music, and I always really enjoyed that. But listening to and understanding Trout Mask Replica has made me realize how like tame and how like just really barely scratching the surface of what's possible with polyrhythms.
Yeah,
that all these other bands, all these other artists really do with it. Because what all these other bands do is like they're even just sticking to that we're all using the same beats.
Right.
For example. So like, 1 second we were all counting to 4 together. Okay, then you switched and now you're counting 5. They're still using the same beats together.
They're all on the same page at the same time.
They're all using the same tempo still.
Yeah.
And it just makes me realize like that's very simple in comparison to Trout Mask Replica, because they're not even they're using different tempos. They're not even sharing the same beats.
Yeah.
Right?
You mean on Trout Mask? Yeah.
On Trout Mask.
Yeah.
They take
not even the same like tonal center sometimes. Like sometimes they're in different keys, they're in different tempos, they're in different time signatures, they're in different everything's different, and yet it works. Like
and they use different things to the point that go beyond what other bands have done.
Yeah.
Okay. And it just makes me realize like, holy shit. What I regard as experimental music is still using so many conventions.
It's
still inside of so many musical rules.
There is a frame around it.
It's crazy.
It might be a very ornate frame. It might be a fun frame that you love.
Yeah.
But it's a frame. Whereas this has a frame too, but it's closer to frameless than most music.
Yes.
Yeah.
It goes farther outside of the frame.
Yeah.
And like you say, how much farther could you potentially go? And that's an interesting question. And I don't know either.
I don't know.
And I do know, Trout Mask Replica is a piece from, like a wider musical movement of avant-garde music, which is intentionally pushing the boundaries of what is possible to do with music. And I know the world is full of musicians that are asking that question, trying to find out, okay, what other rule could we do away with? What other rule could we break? But none of it has become as well known. None of it has become as famous, and none of it has.
There's still nothing like this.
Right. Well, I don't even know what else is out there because none of it has connected with the public consciousness, and none of it has resonated with such a large number of people as Trout Mask has, because this album has a huge following and people love it, and it's resonated with people because it rocks and it's enjoyable to listen to.
I think to find a similar comparison point, you'd actually have to look outside of music, and you'd have to look to other art forms. You'd probably have to look into painting or some kind of sculptor or film for sure. I've heard people compare Trout Mask to Jodorowsky's movies, and that's the closest thing you could compare Trout Mask Replica to, which I love. I can't remember who said that or where I saw that, but might have been somebody on Reddit or something, honestly. But
here's a really good quote from one of the greatest DJs of all time, John Peel.
Nice.
He said, "If there has been anything in the history of popular music which could be described as a work of art in a way that people who are involved in other areas of art would understand, then Trout Mask Replica is probably that work." Right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying, right? If you want to find an analog for this, it's got to be in other disciplines of art.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Look elsewhere. Because nobody's done anything quite like this in music ever again, ever since or before.
And it makes sense too, because and maybe this could be kind of the last little bit of background and history about it. It makes sense because Captain Beefheart himself actually is probably primarily an artist of other art mediums and other art forms besides music.
He's primarily considers himself a sculptor and a painter, and he did at this time as well. He just got into music because I think it was lucrative. Music was hot. And he was friends with Frank Zappa, who had connections. If there was one piece of music that I've ever listened to that I would compare this to, I think it is, and I'm not by any means I cannot talk at length about this album at all. But the only other piece of music that I would compare this to is Ornette Coleman's "The Shape of Jazz to Come," which is a crazy free jazz, space odyssey kind of psychotic album. And to me, this what this does for blues and rock, The Shape of Jazz to Come did for jazz. That, but that is literally the only one I can think of. And again, I can't really speak at length on it because it's been a long time since I've heard it. But it's a similar type of thing. It's just basically taking the jazz rule book and throwing it out the window.
I see. Okay.
And that's what this did with blues, Howlin' Wolf and fucking
blues and rock music. So in 1968, Captain Beefheart starts the process of what is ultimately going to result in this album, Okay, starts this project. Okay, he's about 27 years old.
Wow.
Okay, and he's got he gets to get the members. Almost all the members of his band are gone, either quit or fired or whatever. Right? He's already released 2 albums
that are way more conventional than this. Like,
yeah,
like Safe as Milk is like a blues psychedelic album. Like,
to me, it sounds like psychedelic pop. It sounds like, like 1966, 67 music, just psychedelic, like, hey, Crimson and Clover type shit.
It is like very couched in that type of stuff. Yeah. Still weird though.
The members of his band are gone for whatever reason. So he puts together a new band comprising completely of guys who are 19 and 20 years old. Okay, so they're younger than him. They all know each other already. They all like went to high school together. They all grew up together. They all played in a bunch of bands together. So he basically gets this group of friends, of young men, and he has them move into his house. They live in his house with him.
In Woodland Hills, which is not far from where we are now.
California. They are not allowed to leave the house.
No.
Okay. During a period of 8 to 9 months, he keeps them in the house, barely feeds them.
Like a can, like they share a can of beans a day type stuff.
Right. 1 bowl of soybeans a day is what you eat.
Or they would, if they did venture out, they'd venture out together to dumpster dive or to rob.
Yeah, to steal food. Dumpster dive.
Collect welfare checks, maybe. They were on welfare checks.
Yes.
And they did. They even got arrested for dumpster diving and stealing food, and Zappa bailed them out. Zappa actually had to come by and pay their bail.
Bail them out of jail.
To get them out of jail, yeah.
And during these months, all the waking hours were spent like in a military.
Also, keep in mind, the windows were blacked out in the house. They blacked out the windows.
Wow, I didn't know that.
They blacked out the windows. The band, the musicians, there was 2 bedrooms. Captain Beefheart had a bedroom, and the other, four members of the band all shared a room. Right?
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
And the windows were blacked out.
Yes. Okay.
And the only thing they did was rehearse this album, this one, 8 hours a day for 8 months.
I'm surprised it was only 8 hours a day.
Oh, 8, 12, whatever. I'm sure it varied every day.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes. So, let's see. Yeah. So I have a bunch of quotes here from one of the guitar players.
And before you even get into that, we should just get fully illustrate the material circumstances. So they're poor, windows blacked out.
Yes.
Fucking day. This is all they did, 12 hours a day. And what would happen if they made a mistake while they were rehearsing this?
Yeah,
or
Captain Beefheart was like a drill sergeant, frickin', very authoritarian, what's the word? Disciplinary.
Yeah.
He would like verbally, emotionally, physically keep these guys in line, keep practicing, play it again, play it better, play it tighter, play it more accurately.
He forced one of the guitar players to use a extremely heavy gauge of string that made his hands bleed when he would play. And he tried to protest, like, hey, can I just use my normal gauge of strings? And Beefheart was like, no, it has to be these ones. Like,
that's right.
There was tales of him throwing the drummer down a flight of stairs, and that was like how he kicked the drummer out of the band. There was a story of and I can't remember which band member this was, but he saw it as like a metaphor, like Beefheart was like sending me a message, was he threw him in a dumpster. And he was trying to send the message that, like, you are fucking garbage. Like, you are a piece of trash to me.
Yes. Let me read
please.
to you some quotes. This is Jeff Cotton, who was one of the guitar players. He's like 19 at this time. Okay.
Yeah.
He says, so what happened is we moved to the Trout Mask house where we lived, breathed, and slept. Sometimes, and woke up the next morning with our guitar on, stood up, and started playing again for the next day. So sometimes they would fall asleep without having taken off their instrument. And when you wake up, you're still wearing it and you just keep playing.
And he comes in and probably screams at you and you start rehearsing fucking wing bang fiddle or whatever working title they have for these fucking psychotic songs.
Yeah. He says, there was stress beyond anything you can imagine. Keep in mind, us for musicians, minus Don. Don is Captain Beefheart, Don Van Vliet.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, us for musicians, minus Don, had been very close friends. 3 of the 4 of us had gone to high school together. We played together in a bunch of bands. But we were such good friends, there was never any ego between any of us. And now that can be interesting, as you know, with guitar players, especially lead guitar players. Me and the other guitar player just bounced off one another. We inspired one another. And then the bass player and John French, the drummer, they were all really, really close friends. But the whole situation changed in the Trout Mask sessions because the tables turned. It got to the point where we could not confide in one another.
Whoa. Because
we would be fearful that that person would break under Don's whatever it was that he was using and was going to like tattle on him and tell him what was going on. And then it would end up being that you would be the next one under the like interrogation light, being grilled by the Gestapo or whatever. And that would last 8, 10, 12 hours. And everyone else was supposed to chime in on Beefheart's side and say, yeah, what's wrong with you, man? What's the matter with you, man? So,
also, I have to imagine that there was like one of the things you learn about Beefheart when you get into him is that he's like a notorious bullshitter. Like he's like in the same way that like Bob Dylan engages in a lot of like self myth making via lying. He will just lie. He'll just lie about his past and lie about this or that. And one of the funny things you hear from Beefheart is that they never took drugs during the making of this album, which I call bullshit on, because he was like, they all did LSD. They all were like super acid freaks. So I mean, I'd have to imagine that maybe not the entire time, maybe who knows, or maybe the entire time, there were instances of probably forced drug use. I mean, I'm speculating here, so like I'm putting on my fucking speculator hat. I don't know this to be true. Maybe there's information out there about it one way or the other, but like I would have to think that there was probably intense amounts of like crazy fucking drugs being taken that would make
that
this
is interesting, because here one of the things that he says we were a bunch of young guys. Some of us were still almost coming down from the psychedelics.
Okay.
So you were just wide open to just about anything. It might, I also don't know, but it might be that like this was a period of time where they just recently stopped using drugs.
Possibly, yeah.
And they just hold themselves up. It really does sound like the only fucking thing that they did in this house was play these songs.
Yeah.
And that's all that they fucking did.
Yeah.
It's what it sounds like.
I think you're right. And like I said, I'm totally speculating on that, on the drugs thing, because I have to think there was drugs involved with this, but like I haven't really read a lot that suggests that. Yeah, wouldn't there be?
And in a very kind of like stereotypical way, you look at them, the way they dress, the way that they look,
and you listen to this. You're
the
like,
time and place that it is. You know, the whole hippie place and time that this is, and you listen to how freaking bizarre these ideas and these concepts are that they're playing. You just assume, how could they not be on drugs?
But then you know what? Counterpoint to that. Who's one of their best friends and who produced the record, Frank Zappa. His like notoriously was like an anti-drugs. He did not use drugs, right? So like that was like possibly it's like easy to imagine it for me one way or the other. Like that maybe they were freaking out on acid the whole time, or maybe that was the thing in their clique of friends was like, no, we don't do drugs. Like we don't do this shit.
I really think that it could be, I mean, okay, imagine you yourself that you're in this band and that you're in this house.
I can't,
and that you are expected to be able to play the guitar parts of these songs,
you're right,
from memory at will. Be like, okay, next song, like when Big Jones sets up 1, 2, 3, 4, go, and play it. And like,
you're fucked up.
That's what I mean. Is it could actually be that this band is only capable of accomplishing this if they are not on drugs.
Yes, but you know what? I still think. I mean, you said something that was very like revelatory to me about whatever that passage you're reading from one of the guitar players or whatever, was that they were coming down from drugs, and like. Look, I don't want to go super deep.
And that makes them mentally suggestible.
That's what I was just going to say.
Okay.
Is that because one of the things I struggled with was like, why? And I struggle with this with any cult. Is like, why would you subject yourself to this treatment, to these horrible material conditions? Like for what, right? And it doesn't, like, I don't want to go super deep into my own past with drugs, but I will say, I had a period of time where I did psychedelics pretty regularly, and the suggestibility of your mind and your brain and like your personhood, you do become vulnerable in a way that if you're with kind-hearted people and like-minded people, you might do things that you might not normally do, and if you're with good people, you're going to be okay and it'll be safe and it's not a scary thing. And even I will say after coming off of those drugs and being off them for like a month, there was like a whole period of time where I just was like, and I didn't do it nearly as much as these people probably did, but there was like a whole period of time where I just was like, it was like this whole awakening and like, just like, I was just like, I was like a sponge for information and like and I just wanted to learn all these things and all that. But it's just like, imagine taking someone who is in that state of mind, but imagine instead of a kind, benevolent friend who is maybe suggesting, you go this way, you go that way, or like a good book you're reading or a good film or good music that is like helping you become more open to certain things in life. Imagine you had a Charles Manson who was like, telling you do this, do that, do this, do that. When you're in that vulnerable, suggestible,
filling you with like fear and hate and like guiding you towards an enemy and stuff like that.
And not to mention, like, imagine the power dynamics at play. Beefheart's older. These are his songs. He's friends with Frank Zappa. His best friend is Frank Zappa. He's the one that has the fucking record deal, not you. You're just some fucking kid, right?
Yes.
He just put out 2 big records. They toured Europe and shit.
Your other 4 friends are also in on it, and they haven't left yet.
They haven't cracked. Yeah, they're down, and so they're staying.
So are you going to stay?
Yeah. You don't, and honestly, I have to believe at some level, these guys believed in what they were doing. Like at a certain point, I'm sure some of this started to coalesce into what it is, and maybe they had a moment where they were like, this is really great, like this is like important art that we're making, because it was
so this is the point at which I think you're completely right, and this is the point at which where what I mentioned before is that I'm not so sure that this actually fits the real definition of a cult, like actually a cult.
Like, is it okay? Like, is it okay? Like, if the Manson family, instead of their big statement piece being the Tate murders, the Tate LaBianca murders, if their big statement piece they put out to the world was a record instead, would Charles Manson be like a good guy? Like, I don't think so.
This is what lets you know what the difference is because even though Charles Manson was a musician,
right? He sucked though. He was ass.
When he got a group of followers together, what he put out was not an actual fucking functioning album.
No.
He didn't end up making a fucking album from all of his efforts.
His album was murdering Sharon Tate and their family.
Exactly.
That's what their thing was.
that lets you know what it was that he was spending his time doing the entire time.
Yeah.
It was talking about other shit and getting other plans made other than a record.
Right.
That is gonna get recorded, gonna get written, gonna get released, right?
Right.
Captain Beefheart, when he got his fucking culty group together, the end result of them spending that time was an actual fucking record.
Yes.
Which takes effort. It takes work to get that done.
Yeah.
You don't accidentally get a record made while you're hanging around talking about fucking philosophical, weird, wacky religious topics.
No.
If you're going to spend 8 months in a house and have a record get made at the end of it, that takes actually spending 8 months working on the work to get that record made.
Yes.
And from all the accounts of what happened in there, that is what they were doing.
Yes.
And that's the thing that stands out to me, that there's a huge component of what makes a cult that is missing from that time of those guys in that house, which is the focus on some sort of fucking religious idol and religious topics and some weird philosophical fucking concept that the leader is getting the followers all organized around and getting them to like focus their admiration and their to believe that he's God, basically.
Right.
You know what I mean? There isn't any of that. What they were doing and what they were focusing on was actually a fucking album of music.
Right.
And that's what they were talking about. That's what they were discussing. That's why they were arguing with each other. That's what they were getting in trouble for, was about music. It wasn't
Right.
about fucking religion. It wasn't about God. It wasn't about, you know, the devil and all these fucking, the Armageddon coming and shit.
Right.
They didn't talk about that. They talked about fucking music.
Yes.
They talked about Trout Mask Replica.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes, but like it's like what I'm getting at is like honestly one of the things
sorry to interrupt you. One last point. Once they were done, he let them go.
Yeah.
After they made the record, it's like, okay,
You're done.
Fuck, dude, do we have to go back to the house and live in our fucking commune again? He's like, no, we're done.
I've really I have like
that's not a cult. Cults don't do that.
I have really mixed feelings on this. Look, whether or not this fits the definition of a cult or not, I think maybe we have slightly differing opinions on this. I kind of do. You kind of don't. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle. It probably is a column A, a little column B.
It definitely, it would be inaccurate to say like, oh,
this is
it doesn't
normal.
These
are normal friends.
No.
and
say, like,
out.
it doesn't have any aspects of a cult lifestyle. Like
there's a lot.
For sure it does.
Yeah.
And many. But here, I'm Mr. Quote guy. I won't do this in every episode. I won't just be dropping quotes on every episode.
I think it's important for this one.
I got a bunch for this one. And this is a testament to how I think right on the money you were in saying like, why did they stay? Because they could tell that something was going on.
Yeah.
So this is John French, known affectionately as Drumbo.
Drumbo.
All the musicians had nicknames.
Fun nicknames.
Alternative names.
Yeah.
The drummer's name was Drumbo.
Yep.
And this is something that he said. Okay. And Drumbo, by the way, was the only one of these young 19, 20-year-old guys who had been in Captain Beefheart's band prior to this fucking time in the house.
He was involved in almost every Beefheart album except Ice Cream for Crow, I think. I think that's like one of the only ones he wasn't on.
Okay. So he was the only one who was already in the band, and he basically brought in all these other musicians who were all his friends from high school.
He was like the Goebbels. He was the top. He was the top Gestapo guy in this project. He was the band leader, is what I'm trying to say.
And he was the band leader, exactly. Yeah, Goebbels the band leader.
Goebbels the band leader.
So this is something that he said. Okay, he said, I think we all kind of sensed that there was something going on here that had never been done before, and that was artistically sound.
Yeah.
we knew that there was a market, that there were people out there that were listening to things that weren't conventional. And I was excited about the fact that we were doing something that wasn't conventional. Even though sometimes I really wanted to be somewhere else, that's really what motivated me to stay. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
So I think you're right that these guys, they did have intentions and motivations to make music, to make art.
Yes.
That is ultimately what they were in it for. And they could tell that this is musically, artistically, something worth making. And they stayed to do it, to be a part of it.
Just to bring it back to kind of the conditions of the players while making this. One of the things I've really struggled with when I'm considering all this stuff of like how it was made and like how all these guys were like fucking abused and like mentally tortured, and like we didn't even mention like what was it, he called it like the barrel or something.
Oh yeah,
dude.
Well, you say it because
it was
I
like
barely understand what is meant by the barrel.
So, dear listener, keep in mind that when you're listening to this album, keep in mind that everything you're hearing is a specific part that was meant to be played that way, and it was repeatable. And like Captain Beefheart apparently knew that it was supposed to go this way, right?
Like he could hear when you made a mistake.
Hear when you made a mistake,
yeah.
Which is very impressive to me. Which honestly speaks to his musical brain, which is fascinating in its own way. And keep in mind, he knows how these songs go. And like what would happen is inevitably these guys would make mistakes. That's what happens when you're rehearsing. You make a mistake. It's okay. That happens.
That's what rehearsal is for.
What rehearsal's for.
Yeah.
And so they would forget a bar or they would go to a section early. And so he would halt rehearsals, verbally abuse them. And then there's tales of him putting people in the barrel, which was like an old whiskey drum, I guess, or a beer drum, maybe a big like beer barrel. You'd go in the barrel and he would, I think, beat you with like a stick or something is what I think I remember reading. Like you would go in the barrel and he would berate you for like hours, right? So like,
and like how the quote from the guitarist is like the other guys would have to get on his side and join in and be like, yeah, man, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Yeah. So, okay. And I only bring that up because I think it's an important piece of abuse that we forgot. But
I'm sorry to laugh when this abuse comes. I swear to God, the main reason why it's funny to me is because I know that this was temporary and they survived and they're all okay. Like, all the people involved, like they're all fine. It's okay. It's just like it's so funny because it's such a cartoonish period of time.
Yes.
Where these guys did this and then, you know, survived and went their merry ways. And just looking back on it, it's just comical.
So,
right, sorry, go ahead.
The crux of what I'm getting at is like, I struggled with this a little bit. And I haven't really heard a lot of people say this, is enjoying and listening to Trout Mask Replica ethical?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is it unethical to indulge in this piece of work? Like, you know what I mean?
That's a good question.
In the same way, in the same sense that like people like are like, you can't watch fucking any Roman Polanski movies. He's a fucking horrible
Kevin
man.
Spacey movie. I just watched
Kevin Spacey,
the Usual Suspects last night, and like, Kevin Spacey and Bryan Singer. Like, you can't like that movie anymore.
Yeah, like I hate to be that because in general, I am kind of an absolutist on like I do absolutely separate art from artist. I do. I can take a piece of work and understand that this was a collective effort by many, many people and many, many motivations.
So you can still buy a Tesla, is what you're saying.
I don't think so. But that is a really good counterpoint to what I'm saying.
At time of recording,
that also implies
Elon just heiled Hitler yesterday.
Yeah, he heiled Hitler yesterday, which is super cool and normal, totally defensible.
Sorry, that was a tangent.
Yeah, which that you're also implying that if fucking Tesla is akin to a piece of art, which I do not, I would not say it is. They aren't. It's not the same thing.
I know. But no, you are one on in the camp of, yes, art can be separated from the person who made it.
I will always love Rosemary's Baby. I will always love Thriller. I will always love Seven. And at the same time, I'm convinced that Roman Polanski, maybe Michael Jackson if he did it, I don't know, and Kevin Spacey are all going to burn in hell forever for what they allegedly did, right? I can be of two minds on that simultaneously, and that's not hard for me. Yeah. I don't think that like it's a moral failing of me to like fucking like Chinatown because Roman Polanski is like a huge piece of shit, right?
Yeah, dude, I know. It really is a simple concept. It's like the thing that a person made and the person are different. Are two things.
Yeah,
it's anyway.
But for some reason,
you feel bad listening to this. Is that it?
I feel a little bad when the level of enjoyment.
Why do you feel bad listening to it?
I don't know. Are we exploring? This could be therapy corner. We could do therapy.
Oh,
that's almost what it feels like. Because I'm just like, why?
Show me on the doll why you feel bad listening to this.
Show me on the Trout Mask where Captain Beefheart touched you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I wonder. I guess maybe I'm just saying I'm surprised that that's not more of a discussion around this album. Is like, oh, I can't believe you fucking listen. You enjoy that for reasons beyond of just how psychotic it sounds, which is more like that. Like it was really made in a very unethical, abusive way. And I guess I'm just surprised more people don't take umbrage with that fact. Like, like that is just kind of like, yep. And then he beat his guitar player in a whiskey drum, and he, subjected them to him
like I am,
and then they laugh at him, and then they subjected, and he threw him down a flight of stairs, and then he came out with Trout Mask, and it's really weird and wacky album, and like, look at this, and it's like,
isn't that great? Yeah.
I guess I'm just surprised that like nobody at the time, nobody now like takes any like offense to the fact that the way that this was made is so fucked up. It's such is there a more fucked up album making process? I don't think so.
Question.
Like, has there been an album made in a more fucked up way, like at this level, that would be featured on like 500 greatest albums list or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I don't think so.
Not that pops into my mind or that I'm aware of. I mean,
I don't. Yeah.
But I will say, at least speaking for myself, the main thing that mitigates it is that all the people involved are like proud of it.
Yeah.
And all the people involved survived, and they're all healthy, and they're all fine.
Yeah.
And many of them continue. So all of them, except for one, I think there's only one member that didn't play on Beefheart's next album after this, which, as far as I know, was not produced under these same conditions. What was it? The next one after it is "Lick My Decals Off, Baby."
Well, it's his album discography gets really confusing because there was "Save His Milk," which is the first one, right? Then there's the second one, which is "Strictly Personal," which was actually supposed to be a different record that didn't even come out until years later. And then I think they recorded something between Trout Mask. I think "Lick My Decal," I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty sure "Lick My Decals" was actually recorded between Strictly Personal and Trout Mask, but was released after Trout Mask. And like, there's a bunch of stuff like that in his discography where like,
I didn't know that.
There was basically the period of like 65 to 70, like
it's all jumbled.
And there was a bunch of stuff they recorded during that time period that came out of order in the 70s as his like sequential albums, right? And then he has two albums like that he made that he disavows because they were like commercial and they suck. They're really shitty. And then his last three are like really good and they're like completely informed by the sound of Trout Mask. Like you don't get those ones without Trout Mask. So,
but yeah, I don't know, man. I think it's just it's not the same situation that if the end of the story was that someone died or that someone, was like really irreparably harmed.
Yeah.
For the rest of their life from this thing, like it's not like that. Like the story doesn't end in the way that the Manson story ends.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't. I guess I just struggle with it because it is just like, it's so awful what they put themselves through, I guess.
Ultimately, they did.
Yeah.
They chose
to do this.
To do it. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. And that doesn't make the way that he treated them okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still, don't do that to people, you guys. Listen, if you can hear my voice, if you're listening to this, don't hit people. Don't
Brandon,
put people
shut
in barrels.
up. Shut up. Get in the Brandon barrel now.
Okay, that is the way that all black market dub albums are made.
Oh my God. Are we still recording? I thought we were on a break. Whoa. Brandon, what are you doing in that barrel? Get out of the barrel, silly. You're doing the silly barrel thing again.
You have what, like multiple fucking personality disorder now? Is that what it is?
Probably. But I think we should move on. We should get out of the blacked out. Next topic. We should get out of the blacked out window. Get out of the windowless room that is how they made it.
There's two main phases of this album getting made. The first big phase was when they were in the house.
Yeah.
Okay. Those 8 to 9 months. Then during that time is when Beefheart wrote the music that they're going to play. And when they spent all that time rehearsing it and learning it and getting it committed to memory. Okay.
Yes.
So, and then the second phase is when they actually we got the music. Now let's record it. Let's put it on tape and do the whole technical part of it. Okay. So that first phase, so Captain Beefheart doesn't play a piano, but he's got a piano in the house, and he used a piano to write all of this music.
Yeah, like let that sink in for a second. Captain Beefheart has no experience on the piano. He's never played one, right?
Well, I don't know if he's never played one,
never.
but he's not a piano player. He doesn't know really how to play a piano. Really.
He's not even like really like a musician, I wouldn't even say. Like that is not his
he's a
primary
singer.
Yeah.
And this is not unprecedented, by the way. You know, Michael Jackson wrote a lot of his songs.
Yeah, he didn't
Michael
play an
Jackson
instrument.
did not play any instrument other than just being a singer. And so he would write the musical parts, and the instrument that he used to write them was his voice, and he would sing them to someone, and they would play exactly what he's singing, and that's the music, right?
And that's shares a lot of similarities with Beefheart's process, actually.
Exactly. It's almost the exact same thing, except that, and because Beefheart, like Michael Jackson, he was a singer.
Yeah.
And he could play like a harmonica, and he knew how to get some sounds out of saxophones and stuff like that. Debatable. I'm sure there's other people that this is documented. Whether or not did he actually know how to play the saxophone, like in the quote unquote real way?
I don't think so.
Or did he just have one and play it?
I think he had one and played it.
I think he just had one and he played it. Yeah. So he's in the house to make this album. He sits down with this piano and he goes, okay, I'm going to use this piano to write all this stuff. And so he's tinkering around with it, bling, 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 figure it out. Oh yeah, this is good. And the drummer, John French, he had the job of transcribing the music that he wrote at this piano, and then arrange it into basically make sense of the way that that these musical parts are going to be arranged, what is going to be played at what time, and by which of the members of the band, and put it down on paper and give it to them so that they can start learning it and they can start practicing it. Like
to put it one way, it's like, imagine someone who's never played piano before. I'm sure we've all seen someone who's never played piano. They just go bong, 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 right? Imagine Beefheart. He starts from that point, right, of like proficiency and like ability, right? Goes bling, bong, 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 bong. That's the bass line. Bong, 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 bong. That's the first guitar part, please, John.
at this point in the discussion, I want to start to temper this because when when you look at the melodies and what each guitar and the bass
it
are
is more
playing,
sophisticated than what I'm saying. Yes.
Well, wait. What I mean is this: is that when you hear what they're all playing at the same time, there's the effect of chaos and not matching and notes clashing with each other. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, when you listen to only one of them in isolation, there's a lot of moments where what is being played is actually a really conventional melody.
Yes.
That like would be in a normal song. It's just that it's being played at the same time with something else that completely rubs against it and is very dissonant next to it.
Yes.
So, and the reason why I say that is,
I would say dissonance is a very key glossary term you should keep in mind for this part of the discussion.
Yes. So dissonance. So when something is sonorous, consonant. So con meaning like in the sense of with. Consonant meaning they blend, they sound nice together. Okay? Yeah. When things are in tune, when they're in harmony, like most of the music that we listen to, it's very consonant, and that's what makes it so pleasing. When two voices are singing in harmony, the consonance is so nice. Dissonance is when these two sound waves, these two pitches, these two notes that they're playing really disagree.
Yeah,
and they rub against each other and they don't sound nice.
Yeah.
So this album is lots of playing intentionally with dissonance. And so this is the thing, because there's a really great YouTuber that I found looking at this. What the hell is his name? Let me say this guy's name. Samuel Andreev.
Okay.
Okay. They're Andreyev, Samuel Andreev. Is a very qualified musician who has analyzed the music on Trout Mask Replica and interviewed all the band members and done like some very academic analysis and discussion about what's happening here that goes beyond just the reporting of the emotional impact that like a lot of people do when they're discussing it. Whoa, it sounds crazy. Oh man, it's all disjointed. He's like actually academically looking at, okay, what is happening? Right. And it's really fascinating, and you should check it out. I'm not going to go into all of it, but the reason why I pause you there and point out that what he wrote on that piano in many cases is an actually logical, cogent, a real melody.
Right.
Is because the reality of the music that's on this album does defy your expectation and defies your initial understanding of that this is complete fucking chaos. Yeah. And that this is just a dude who just slapped his hand on the fucking keyboard and told somebody to write it down and tell that guitar player to play it. It isn't actually that. It's every part. So it's not without a key. Right. Each part, almost all of them are in a recognizable key, a standard Western, G major or F sharp minor, or a real thing. It's just that it's being played at the same time as something else that disagrees with it. Yeah. And that doesn't conventionally match it. So is it like the pieces, like let's say like Pacheco Blues is, for example, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Let's say it's in G, but like the bass line might be in like B or something. Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. So like the piece as a whole has a tonal center, but there are pieces with There are moments when it does. Okay, so for example, take the song Frownland. Yeah. The first song, okay? The first few bars of Frownland, both guitars and the bass are all playing in the same key of C major. Yes. Okay, so that's why for a second, when the album starts, for a second, it's like, ooh, this is funky, this is cool. Yeah. For a second, it's like, dude, this is dope. Yeah. And then a second later, it's like, what the fuck is happening? Mm-hmm. Okay? And it's pretty genius how it starts that way. It doesn't immediately hit with 3 different instruments playing in 3 different keys.
Right.
It begins, they're all playing in the same key. And basically what they do in these songs is, you can imagine guitar 1, guitar 2, and bass. They're changing, each one of them individually is changing what key they're playing in. And so at times they're playing in 3 different keys. Sometimes 2 of them are in one key and the third one is in a different one.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, like the first few seconds of Frownland, all 3 of them are in the same key.
Yeah.
So sometimes. But to say that achieves a cohesive tonal center across the whole thing, no.
Not really, no.
Because they just randomly change. And
randomly or not really, right? Like, because they're pre-written bars, right? Like, I guess, like, I was being a little facetious when I said Captain Beefheart just banged away on a piano, but it's just like he would basically play a melody or some kind of a bar, or John French, there's a book, I read a passage of it, and he described it as like, he would play this thing on the piano that he liked. I would write it down note for note how he played it. And then either he or we would decide, okay, that's going to be like the bass part for this song, right? Mm-hmm. And then he would play around a little bit more, and then he'd be like, oh, I like that. That's going to be the guitar part for the same song, and vice versa, and right, and like. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was written in snippets.
Yeah,
and it's really interesting because like.
And then John's job was to say this 2-bar loop of this that we were calling the bass line goes like this 2-bar loop, that's the guitar part, this 2-bar loop, that's the other guitar part. This is like section 1 of this song, and it lasts for this length, right? Like kind of.
And and you know, if you're listening to this, I don't know if you've ever messed around with like a music making program or like a music production program of some kind, you know, like GarageBand or Fruity Loops or something like that. Mm-hmm. But for a lot of people, you know, one of the kind of early phases of your tinkering around with making music when you're getting started with it in the modern age can basically consist of just kind of moving loops of music around and just copying and pasting and experimenting with putting this loop with this loop, and okay, I'll make this happen 4 times, and then this other little synthesizer part will come in after the 4th time through, and the way that you make your first songs when you're first getting into making music is what your song is a collection of loops that you have arranged.
Yeah.
And the original creative action that you've taken is the arrangement of these loops that someone else made, you know? And it's really fascinating because that is essentially the exact method by which these songs were assembled, but not using...
John French was Captain Beefheart's Fruity Loops.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He's basically just mixing and matching and moving things around and making those creative decisions of like... You know, we got all these loops literally on paper. Mm-hmm. How should we just how do we want to arrange all of these isolated musical little phrases? Yeah. And that's essentially the way that the songs got put together.
And there was other ways that that was I think the primary way that they composed the music together. But there was other ways too, like he would whistle parts to John French, and John French would transcribe it that way. Captain Beefheart famously has like an amazing vocal range. He, I guess, has like a 5-octave vocal range. Like he's like a really crazy, accomplished singer. Like if you listen to like Bongo Fury, which is like the live album he did with Zappa, there's stuff on there where I'm just like, man, he has like impeccable control over his voice. He's like, and Zappa's like a virtuoso, right? And he's like hanging in there vocally with Zappa's guitar work, right? And Zappa was like a shredder. So he's like he's actually like an incredible singer, like awesome. That. But so he would sing stuff, which he would like sing parts to John French, and John French would transcribe those as stuff. And then there was even stuff where he would say, and I think this is why John French got thrown down a flight of stairs and then kicked out of the band, and also subsequently left off the liner notes of Trout Mask. Like was like
He
not.
was?
I don't know if he. I don't think he was left up. Maybe I could be talking out of turn there, but he was basically kicked out of the band in the middle of this because Beefheart asked him to play a strawberry on the drums. And he couldn't do it to Beefheart's like satisfaction. So Beefheart threw him down a flight of stairs and kicked him out of the band. And then like basically like attributed a lot of his contributions to someone else for like a long time. But it was complete. It was like, yeah, because he couldn't play a strawberry, right?
Oh my
so
God.
The piano thing was one way he did it. I think was probably the primary way, and also the way that I think is allows us in to this process most easiest. Like it like that process like makes the most sense to me as a musician. That like okay, he played something on the piano, it was weird, and that became guitar part 1. He played something else, weird, guitar part 2. Played something else. Did that become the drum part? Is what I wonder. Like how much autonomy did he have as a drummer, or was Beefheart? Because the drums are fucking insane on this too,
dude.
The drums are fucking unbelievably weird and like off kilter,
difficult to play, and so amazing, and such interesting ideas that are being played on the drums, and they are just as written and established and not improvised, as the rest of the music, and it's amazing.
Yeah,
these songs are fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like not even in the sense of like they're good. Like what you usually mean when it's like, oh, that's a good song. I like that song. They're amazing in the sense that they inspire amazement at them.
Awe.
You know, not like
awe-inspiring.
They inspire.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not amazing as like, dude, I love singing it. The melody just really gets me. Not like that. No, it's like, holy shit, look at that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And like also like from a listening standpoint, this album has like a really just like overwhelming effect where like it's hard to parse it out. Like it's hard for me to like talk specifically about certain songs because it's so hard to latch on to anything because there's so much happening all at once. It's like and it's an hour and a half long almost. Like it's really like overwhelming like to even try to like think about the music on like a more granular level because of how dense it is. It
washes over you.
Yeah.
I before listening to it, I was like, I really didn't like how long it was. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like I already know this is going to sound chaotic and I have to endure it for that long. What the fuck? But as I was listening to it, I was like, you know, it really works that this is so long because
it's part of the effect.
Exactly. It eventually has the effect of washing over you and you end up being in its world. Like there were times when I would like sort of periodically forget that this is not what all music sounds like, you know, like I would sort of like forget that
it's like intoxicating.
Oh yeah, all other music uses different rules than this.
Yeah,
you know, after a while, this starts to sound normal.
It's it's in a very intoxicating headspace to be in for that length of time. Once you start to enjoy it, it is Stockholm syndrome-y feeling.
Yeah, right. You get indoctrinated into the cult.
You do
when you listen to it.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's keep talking about the music. Sorry.
So now next phase is now it's time to record it. Now it's time to get all this music that they made onto tape. And they did it essentially in one go.
Yes.
One day, okay, both guitars, the bass, the drums, playing together, doing basically one, maybe 2 takes of each song, and they're done. And that is a testament to the degree to which they were prepared. Okay?
Yes.
To be able to do that with any songs, even conventional ones.
Yeah.
That like, you know, are using normal musical little rules and things that you are already have spent your whole life playing before now. It's difficult to get normal songs done in that few takes. So to be able to play something that is complicated and nail it like an Olympian. You know what I mean?
Yes.
When an Olympian gets up on the diving board and they need to hit this complicated dive and they only get to do it, they only get to try once. And you have to do it on that one try. You just imagine, it takes 4 years of practice, of repetition to be able to, on demand, do it the first time. That's what they were like. That is the degree to which they fucking practiced these notes.
You're right.
That they could hit the dive.
You're right.
When they needed to.
It's almost like an order of magnitude more impressive than that because of what this is. Because of this music is so insane. Like, they kept this shit all straight in their fucking head somehow. I don't know how they did that. It was the practice. It was the practicing, 8 hours a day, I guess. But like, oh my God. I like, and I think John French talked about that as like one of the big, like, overwhelming stresses he had was like, it has to be this way. And I have to keep all of it straight in my head of like how it goes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that was part of the stress of it.
And I only say that to emphasize what you're saying about how impressive it is that they recorded it in 6 hours. Like,
so this is one of the guitarists, Jeff Cotton.
Okay.
Says, so it took a real focus, not in the mind, but a real focus. I call it a spiritual focus, maybe a vertical focus where you're feeling the other musicians. You're not even hearing them because what good does that do?
It's true.
Right? Like because
It's
normally
true.
when you're playing music in a band, you are listening and using what the other musicians are playing as a reference to guide your own hand and to guide what you're playing, right? And so he's saying, like, and like you're saying, this is another order. You can't do that with this music because what they're playing does not guide what you're playing.
It's like diametrically opposed to what you're playing.
He says, you need to feel their breath, the breath of their phrase, so you come together. So that saved us. For that 8 or 9 months, there was nothing else involved there. So they just spent, and he says, and so John would give us a part, we'd work on it. So you can imagine. Now there's 3 of us playing, we're all in different time signatures, different key signatures, and we start the phrase together. 4 minutes later or whatever, usually 4 beats later, we end together that we're all in a different time. And you can hear that.
And it might be like a new
the
section.
songs.
And then at that point they might switch to like a new section that is 4 different concurrent opposing parts, right? That interact in a whole different way, right? Within the same song.
Yeah. And they were so ready to record that they were light years beyond what. So, look, it is normal for musicians to come into the studio ready. That's normal.
Yeah.
Already learned everything, ready to play it and get it right away. Okay, that's not strange. But he says there were no challenging demands while recording the album because all we had to do is go in there. Frank Zappa turned on the machine. We got his levels. We begin playing. Everything was 1 take, maybe 2 takes. I don't even remember 3 takes on anything. He says, in fact, I remember one part of the session where Frank is in there at the controls and he nods out and he goes to sleep while we're recording. He didn't even need to do anything. So it just went like that. 6.5 hours later, we're done.
Yeah.
So, normally the engineer, the producer, they're involved in this process. There's discussions to be had. There's decisions to be made. There's feedback to give. Mm-hmm. The dude in charge of recording the shit fell asleep while they're doing it because they were so on autopilot and they were so locked in. Nobody needed to do it. Just press record and give us a second and we'll let you know when we're done. Basically.
Speaks to the deep weirdness of Frank Zappa that he was able to fall asleep during this fucking music. Like, oh my God. Like, how, dude?
Dude. So, isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Amazing.
I read a good Frank Zappa quote too, where he just he was also very hands off, not just because they were so prepared, but he was like, he basically, to get the gist of the quote, I don't have it in front of me, but he just was like, there was no sense in like telling Beefheart that like you had to do something a certain way, this way or that way, because his brain just like didn't work that way.
That's right.
Like he said,
you couldn't give him the feedback.
Yeah. Like he was just like, if I knew that Beefheart had it set in his mind that he was going to make a unique creative object, the best thing I could do is just let him do it the way he wants to do it. Like get out of his way. Like there was Frank Zappa initially wanted to do this as like a field recording, what he called it. So there are a couple songs on here where he brought some mobile recording stuff to their Woodland Hills cult compound,
to the cult house.
To the cult house. And what they did is they just put, and this, imagine this album, the way it is, the way it sounds, the way they recorded it or wrote it and everything. What he did to get some isolation in that house was he just put every band member in a different room of the house with the door closed to get some isolation, right? And then they would record some of these songs in different rooms.
Without like they couldn't hear each other?
Like without seeing each other, or like, yeah, like, I mean, they could hear each other through the walls of the house, right? See, but like, so what happened was,
right, and if you play it in bands, you can have an appreciation for
that's so hard.
How familiar must you be with the material to be able to do that?
But that didn't happen for very long, as far as I know. Most of the stuff was actually recorded in like a pro studio. Like some of it was recorded at Sunset Sound.
On that one day.
Yeah.
They came in, Frank fell asleep, and they recorded all of it, or at least all the songs that have the band, the main sound.
Yeah,
is from that day. Yeah.
And it's because I think Zappa wanted to capture the cult compoundness of this thing and have that be more of like an integral part of the sound and the recording, right? Was to capture it where it was happening, which I kind of get. Like, it's kind of cool, like Alan Lomax style, like go record this cult at their house. Kind of amazing. But Beefheart was convinced that Zappa was just like being a cheapskate, basically. And he said, no, I'm not going to let you record it all here. We have to go to a real studio because I think you're just trying to cheap out on me. And so Zappa was just like, okay, because he didn't want to fucking fight him on it, because he's like, Beefheart's like insane. You know, he's just like, okay, all right, I'll book his time at a studio. We'll go to a studio. Like, we'll go. Like, hands up, don't shoot me.
Another quote, Frank Zappa said, I think that if he had been produced by any professional famous producer, there could have been a number of suicides involved.
Yeah. Straight up, dude. Like can you imagine
he's
like
fucking impossible to work with. Like, you can't suggest ideas to him. Yeah.
Can you imagine someone like Phil Spector, who was like always on a hair trigger with a real gun in the studio? Like, he would have killed Frank. He would have killed Captain Beefheart. He would have shot him with a gun. In the studio, he would have shot him with a gun.
Yes. Yes. So another really interesting thing that I notice when I listen to this is it's fascinating to me the disparity of the levels of preparedness between the band members and Captain Beefheart himself.
Yeah.
Does this stand out to you too? You know what I'm getting at here?
I think I do.
He's such an authoritarian, obviously, about how prepared they must be. Mm-hmm. How airtight their memorization and accuracy of their parts needs to be. Mm-hmm. But on the songs where it's just a vocal alone, him doing his poetry, he's making mistakes.
Yeah.
He's like flubbing, reading the fucking poem off the page.
Yeah.
And he keeps that mistake. He doesn't do another take. I'm convinced that his saxophone playing that he does is improvised completely, that he is not playing written and prepared notes. He's just going and making the shit up, and it's different every time. And he refused to wear headphones to be able to listen to the backing track as he recorded his vocals.
I was just going to bring this up.
So the band records all their stuff first without him singing, and then second he goes back on Okay, now I'm going to play back for you. The normal way that it goes is, okay, singer, you come in here, step up to the microphone, singer, and we'll give you some headphones, and you get to listen to what the band played and sing along with them.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
Yeah.
Don't give me those headphones.
Yeah.
I'll just stand here and do it. So the vocals that you hear on this album are him hearing the sound coming through the glass through the wall from the control room in the next room into the room where he's standing, and using that as a reference to sing his parts, which inadvertently make it not all the time in sync. And so it's so fascinating to me how he has this fucking iron fist demand of accuracy about it, but in his own performance, it's so fucking loose and chaotic and not the same every time.
And okay, that's another instance where I think Zappa just threw his hands up and was like, I'm not going to tell him how to make his art, right? For me, the effect of I only think it's some of the vocals are out of sync. Some of them sound very like locked in and tight. Some of them. Exactly. Yeah.
There's a bunch of it that's like
locked in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so the effect of him recording through the vocals with only hearing bleed from the fucking wall is a bunch of it is just out of sync, right? So the band is all moving and he's just like half a beat behind the band with his parts. Okay.
And you can hear him like stutter because you realize that he like either forgot a word or like needs to find his spot. You can feel it.
Yeah.
And he keeps it.
Yeah. So the effect that had on me when I heard that, I'm just like, oh my God, like that's like, I didn't really know what to think. It was a little disappointing, a little bit of a letdown, but honestly, where I've kind of arrived on the out of sync vocal thing is it actually adds to the effect of the art itself. It's actually like kind of an intrinsic part of a lot of these songs for me now is the fact that he's lagging. All it does is it like underlines and enhances the chaos. And it's almost like it's not something you could even try to do, to like try to sing this shit like half a beat off. Like that would be really hard like to do.
That's true. If he did have the headphones and he's like, okay, I want it to be lagging.
I don't think he could do it. I don't think anybody could really do it like in the way that like actually being delayed like would be, you know?
So it might have been an intentional little method to get his desired effect.
Well, you know what it is, man, is it's another instance of him pushing the frame out, right? Of him pushing the frame out a picture of him saying, of them being like, okay, here's a music rule. Frank Zappa going, hey, actually, so there's this rule where when you're recording, you have to be able to hear the music. He's just like, no, I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Right. And I love that. I actually love that. And again, it emphasizes the art above every other consideration, right? Is that it's like telling a painter like you have to hold your brush this way. And he's like, no, I fucking don't, actually. You know what I mean? Like I don't. Yep. And he's right, you don't. You actually don't, right?
Which touches back into what we were talking about before where like the qualities that this music has, or that this recording has as a work of art, are more similar, and they're more easily understood by the conventions of different forms of art.
Absolutely.
By like sculpting and painting.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And I think we should also like kind of, I think we've done a good job like kind of emphasizing John French and the band because one thing that I was really careful, well, I haven't been careful not to do this because look at this episode. I was going to say, I was trying really hard not to over-intellectualize this album, which I failed.
We might have done that.
We failed. Yeah. But the only reason I say that is because the idea to do this, Captain Beefheart's idea to do this, which is play something wacky on the piano, transcribe it as a loop for this part, this part, this part, this part, and they're all different, right? That is actually not it's a crazy idea, but it's not that crazy, really. If that's the idea, right? That is what this is. It's all these disparate parts playing at the same time. Okay, that's the idea. It's not actually that crazy.
That's true. If you can explain it in one sentence like you just did, how crazy is that really?
Right.
It actually is kind of a simple concept. Yeah.
It is.
Yes.
The crazy part, the actually crazy thing is the execution.
Yeah. Yes. That's a good point.
That is what is actually unbelievable about this album. Standout songs? Any?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Yeah.
So it's so fascinating because first of all, the first one that I wrote down as my favorite tracks is Well.
Okay.
Okay, so that's one of the ones that's only Captain Beefheart's voice, just him reciting a poem with no band.
Interesting.
It's the well, da 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 da, well,
Oh,
well,
okay, yeah.
da 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 da, well, well.
Yeah.
That one, I
Sick.
fucking love that song.
That's
it's
cool. That's
amazing.
a cool one.
Because it sounds to me like it's you know when you hear like an indigenous like medicine man chant. You know, just like something that from a documentary that like an anthropologist just like, you know, recorded just like some indigenous person in some remote part of the world, some guy from a really old culture, old way of life that's still like hunter-gatherer living off the land. And they're just like, and they're just like doing some sort of song or chant that like we don't really understand the significance of this, what this means, the purpose of this chanting, you know?
Yeah.
It has that quality, but it's in English and it's by a modern person who lives in modern society.
You know,
but it feels like that.
One of my favorite, it's honestly, it's going to be hard for me to parse out specific favorite songs. I have some I wrote down, but the shit is so intricate and weird. It's like I can't really talk about it unless it's like playing in the moment.
I'm the same way. I have 4 others written down, and I can't recall what they sound like right now.
Yeah, dude.
All that I know is as I was listening to it, I identified it as one that I enjoy, and I wrote the title down.
There's 2,
and I can't describe to you what is in the song and what it is that I like.
I can get through my favorites and standout ones.
But I'll let you know if we have any in common.
It's almost feels like doing a disservice though, because all the ones I latched onto are the ones that you can identify as like songs, right? And it's almost
that have like a conventional thing in them.
Yeah, like those are the ones that my ear latches onto, and it's like I can't help that. You know, I'm conditioned. We're conditioned as humans and music enjoyers to fucking latch onto that stuff, and that stuff is in here. But like so much of the album, these songs are like not reflective. Like they're not reflective, and they are. These songs are also fucking insane. Like they're not normal songs. Like
so much of it doesn't have a little handhold that your mind can sort of musically latch onto and go, oh yeah, okay.
These ones do
it's
though.
Just slippery fucking cliff. Like, you know?
These ones that I singled out kind of do though. Ella Guru has that Ella Guru, and like such like a. I mean this in the best way. Like such an ugly song, such an ugly, like gross, not gross, but just like a kind of weird, like discordant, scary kind of a feeling when you hear Ella Guru. It's not fun, but it's good,
not comforting.
But it is a melody though that I heard.
Yeah,
it is a melody.
Which is hard to come by on this album.
The one, there's 2 that like again can't really speak at length on unless they're like piping into my head at the moment I'm listening to them. Moonlight in Vermont, love that one. I want to say Moonlight in Vermont. There's 2 that I would describe. Moonlight in Vermont and China Pig these are the two examples that I would use to like explain how this is a perversion of the blues. It is like taking the American blues to like its most furthest place that you could possibly take it, right? Those two songs are great examples of that. Like Moonlight in Vermont is like the fucked up Trout Mask kind of sound you'd expect, but like there are parts of it that are like kind of really like American bluesy, and it's like kind of sick. And then he's constantly like throwing a fucking wrench in it in the middle of it, right? And then China Pig is like, we talked about it earlier, I think maybe the camera, but
yeah, I think we were talking about it before we started recording.
But that one is just like an improvisation, right? And it's like a very traditional kind of blues thing, and it fits like a glove in here.
It's a conventional guitar part.
Yeah,
it's a normal guitar part, and it's played by a different person, not one of the members of the band that's in everything else. It's played by the first guitar player to be in Captain Beefheart's band.
Yeah.
It just makes that one little appearance there.
So I love China Pig, but I feel like such a basic bitch for liking it as much as I do, because it's like so much of it's like so not the point
one
of the
normal
album.
song that's on the entire record. It's like,
Then there's, I only bring up the Blimp because it has that I remember that, so I single that out.
The Blimp!
Yeah. And then, again, can't speak at length about it, but I remember writing it down. When Big Joan sets up is probably my favorite purely instrumental one. Like, I don't
think... Her hands are too small, man. Her hands are too small.
I think that one's instrumental, right? I don't know. No,
there's a vocal, but that's the one where he's like, Big Joan, she don't like to go out onto the beach because she knows that the people will laugh at her because her hands are too small.
Okay. Yeah. If you say so, I don't remember that.
I guess, but Big Joan, I'll sit next to you, Big Joan. When you go out, I don't mind that your hands are too small.
Yeah, right.
That's almost exactly what the lyrics are.
So I single that one out, I guess. You're right. I'm sure there is a vocal part. I believe you. But I single that one out because it's some of my favorite instrumental stuff. Because there's a long passage where it is instrumental.
Yeah, yes. There's a big section of it with no vocals. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of like something I kind of forgot to mention earlier, but it works totally for this, is like, does this album give you like a really crazy like whiplash effect? And I'll explain what I mean by that. Like, it'll start with like cacophonous, like like craziness, right?
Yes.
And then the next track will be like him reciting a poem. And it's like, and I'm reciting a poem, and now this is what's happening, and now the album's gonna be like this, and now I'm doing this song like this, and there's nothing else happening, and it's kind of boring. And then it's like silence. And that happens like 5 or 6 times in the album, because there's like 5 or 6 songs that are like really quiet, like they're totally opposite of like most of the album.
That's true. It makes me I didn't even notice. It makes me realize that it does do that sort of, it gives you a break, has an intermission.
There's soft,
dynamics
loud
to it.
There's a loud, soft, loud kind of thing happening.
There's dynamics, which is a very classical thing to do with music and with art and with storytelling.
But it's parsed out at like a really even interval, like throughout the record. It's like right when you're just like, oh my God, like stop, I can't listen to this anymore. It's like,
it gives you a break.
You're taking a break.
Right when you need a break, you get a break.
I'm lulling you into false sense of security.
Yes.
And now you're having Stockholm Syndrome. And now you're going to pick up the gun. And now I'm going to say the words, and you're going to go to the president's house.
Yes.
And then it's just like, bang, plonk, plonk, plonk. And it's just like, oh my God. It's like a really insane feeling that it makes you feel fucking insane, like while you're listening to it. And it's because there are those little breaks. Like you take a breath and then it starts again, and it's like relentless. Like,
I mean, to answer your question, I would have to say that for me personally, it actually sort of had the opposite effect. Is
really
the fact that there was like a not logical, but like a a sort of normal pace to the dynamics of it getting loud and crazy and then chilling out helped me not feel insane and helped me actually sort of like take it in a way
in
that
like
I
chunks
that I could handle, because it actually is presented in a way that makes it easier to take in,
to digest.
Yeah.
I kind of think we're both right, because I agree with you that also has that effect as well. It gives me a moment to like parse what I just heard and what I'm about to hear, right?
You can rest your mind from that for a second,
but
to then be ready for when it happens again.
It also makes me feel like a Manchurian Candidate, and that he's like lulling me in. I feel like I'm being brainwashed at this. It has that effect on me as well. Like, it makes me feel a little crazy, like there's all this crazy, and then it stops and you're fine. And then he beats you again, and then it stops and it's fine. It's not that bad. It's pretty good, right? You like this. You like that. You like this. You like this. Beating you. Fuck you. Beat you to death. Kill you. Go in the barrel. Oh my God. Wow. Okay, he writes poetry too. Oh, and I guess he's a painter. That's cool. Stop. Don't even go there. Beating you now. Killing you. I will kill you if you don't play the guitar right. Fuck you. And then the album's over. And you're just like, oh my God. It's really fucking
awesome.
insane. It's awesome. Great. It's awesome. Yeah.
It's fucking, I love
cool.
it, man.
It's really good.
Yeah. My other favorite tracks that I wrote down: Veterans Day Poppy, Pachuco Cadaver.
I wrote both those down too.
Pachuco Cadaver is so dope. And then toward the end, Fallen Ditch and Sugar and Spikes.
What's the fart one?
Oh, the old fart.
That one, he actually says Trout Mask in it, which
old
like.
Fart at Play.
Right. I don't have anything to say about that really, but it has fart in it. So,
man, what a fucking here. Real quick, by the way, speaking of how wild and surreal his poetry is, sort of as a like microcosm of the what I said about how the first song, Frownland, begins with all instruments in the same key. Mm-hmm. It begins for a second as cohesive, and then it fractures off from there, right? I think the lyrics do that as well.
Totally.
Because the lyrics throughout the album are like, okay, this is just bizarre.
What does this mean? He has like a philosophy, though.
Yes.
Right?
I heard him say in one interview that why is his name Captain Beefheart?
Yeah.
Did you hear this?
I think, continue. Yes, I think I did.
He said...
He gave multiple reasons, but yeah.
Okay. Well, in this one particular interview, I think it was David Letterman. Mm-hmm. And what he said was like, well, it's because I've got beef in my heart.
Right.
Like, I've beef in the sense of I got problems. I got issues.
Yeah.
I got complaints. I got grievances with the system, with the world, with the government, with the man, with how it is.
Yeah.
I got a bone to pick with the man, dude. I got beef in my heart, you know?
I also heard he calls himself that because one day he was taking a piss and he looked down at his dick and he said, it's like a little beef heart down there.
It's probably that. That's probably the real reason. I think I have beef in my heart he came up with later.
He used to like chase his girlfriend around the house with his dick out and say, come get some beef heart or something like that. And I'm like,
that has to be the real reason.
That's probably really what it was.
It has to be. So surreal ass lyrics throughout, but the lyrics to Frownland, are so, all right. I'm just going to read them. No music, no weird manner of performance.
You promise? Right? You promise?
I'll try my best. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your Frownland. Mm. My spirit's made up of the ocean and the sky and the sun and the moon, and all my eyes can see. I cannot go back to your land of gloom, where black, jagged shadows remind me of the coming of your doom. I want my own land. Take my hand and come with me. It's not too late for you, it's not too late for me to find my homeland, where a man can stand by another man without an ego flying, with no man lying and no one dying by an earthly hand. Let the devils burn and the beggar learn, and let the little girls that live in those old worlds take my kind hand. My smile is stuck. I cannot go back to your frownland. I cannot go back to your frownland.
It's honestly beautiful.
It's so fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It is.
And it's so cogent.
Yeah.
And profound. That is good poetry. Those are good lyrics that, like, you get it. It's easy to understand.
Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful poem.
in contrast to the rest. And I really feel that it's this similar thing to how those first few musical seconds are in key, and then it explodes.
Yeah.
I feel like he did that too. Like, the first song is like, here's something that really makes sense, and then here we go. We're off into fast and bulbous.
Fast and bulbous, dude.
Fast and bulbous.
Fast and bulbous.
I'm really grateful that you picked this album. I think this was good for my education, just as a musician and as a enjoyer and appreciator of music. I think that this, like, it widened my understanding. It's helped me because it has put into perspective. I'd never realized, like, how many rules all the music that I know does follow.
Yeah.
And how truly conventional so much stuff that I used to think is like avant-garde, it's really not.
It's not.
And it really made me understand, like, where the lines of doing something that is creative and is new and is stepping outside and, you know, is kind of breaking a boundary, that, like, that boundary is actually way farther over there than I thought that it was.
Yeah.
You know?
And it gives me an appreciation for, like, it's one thing to conceive of some kind of boundary breaking piece of music, type of music. It is a totally another thing to actually accomplish it and execute it and create it. Like, I don't think I'm capable as a musician. I'm certainly not. There's so much music I could say that about that I'm not capable of creating, right? But, like,
almost all of it. Speaking for myself.
Yeah, this, I could even say some of my musical, I could pretty confidently, I believe, say that some of my musical idols couldn't accomplish this.
Yep.
Like, some of the people whose music I will forever be grasping at, and I will never reach. I will never, ever, in a million years, in a million lifetimes, will I reach the creative heights of, you know, a Jimi Hendrix or a fucking whoever, right? But I'm confident that they would not be able to do this. This was like a really unique, singular. This is a possibly one of the most singular pieces of art I've ever encountered in my whole life, music or otherwise. Like, there's
I agree with you.
Certainly nothing like this that I've ever heard. And you know what? And I'm grateful that we did this together because. This has been on the back burner for me for my whole adult life, really. And meanwhile, I'm sitting there showing people Beefheart records, digging into Zappa, you know, showing people Ice Cream for Crow, liking Save His Milk. But, like, the whole time, this hole in my collection of music that I consider part of, like, the pantheon of, like, my creativity and, like, what I like to enjoy. And it's been sitting there staring at me for years, and I've been, like, really afraid to, like, tackle this album. And I'm grateful that we did it together because it honestly took something like this to do, like, to say
to finally get around to it.
To say, like, with a friend, with someone who could help me parse through it. And help parse through my feelings on it, and help me understand it. You know, it's so much better to go through it with somebody What I'm saying is bring a friend if you're going to listen to Trout Mask Replica.
Yeah, use the buddy system.
Use the buddy system. Don't get lost. Don't get lost. You need to make sure you are holding on to one end of the string and your friend has the other end, and you guys can never let go. You guys got to hang on.
Yeah, because those breadcrumbs will get eaten.
They'll get eaten. Yep.
Yeah, by creatures.
Zoot Horn Rolo will probably eat him up. They're hungry. He's hungry. You can't leave
he only had a
breadcrumbs.
bowl of soybeans today.
Yeah.
He's hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I think the last thought that I have is it should be mentioned how many prominent musical giants revere this album and cite it as a active, conscious influence on them, right? And it makes me realize that like this, and I think that listening to this album has influenced me in a similar way that it has influenced all these other musicians, which is that it's not a direct musical influence. It doesn't make you play more like this.
No.
It doesn't make you go out and make music that sounds like this. It's influential in a different way. It influences you in your perspective.
Yes.
Not in your music. It just changes the way that you conceive of and the way that you think about music now.
Yeah.
Or
Which
like
will
I was
be
saying,
different.
the boundaries are different places now. Like I'm sort of interested to see what if I end up making music that sounds different than what my previous self would have made. Now that I have sort of been awakened to these like, holy shit, I didn't even think that you could do that. I didn't even think that you could do that. It doesn't make you replicate him.
No.
It just opens, your mind is more open now. You know what I mean? And
like
it's influential in that way. And that's kind of rare.
And like what a gift that is to the wider music community, because I totally agree and relate to that feeling of like, this has now, music feels more boundless to me now.
Yeah.
Which is very
exciting. I feel like I'm less likely to toss out an idea.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm less likely to go like, no.
Yeah.
You can't do that. You can't do that.
And like, imagine that feeling now exists in the mind, in the heart, in the soul of every single musician who hears this. Mm-hmm. And yet what that manifests will be completely different for every musician. Right. Like the manifestation of the boundaries, like the aperture widening for you as a musician, it means something different for me, and means something different for John Frusciante, who loves this record. It means something different for David Lynch, who cited this as his favorite record of all time. Like
exactly. It's going to make different ideas come out of each one of those individuals.
Yeah.
Right. And like, because as opposed to the normal way that an album is influential is it makes people start sounding like that.
Yes. That's not what this will do.
This is not what this is. Yeah.
And like
it's fascinating.
What an amazing like gift as a piece of work that this is that rather than creating copycats, it makes you more you. It's opening. Wow. It is actually opening the possibilities of you. It's actually opening up the possibility of what you can be as an artist, right? It's adding depth to your creativity.
It's taking away barriers. Like it's removing like stop signs and anyway.
Yeah, God. All right.
Very cool. Good pick.
Are you ready Are you ready for the most redundant question of all time? Would you recommend Trout Mask Replica?
Yes, I would recommend it. And if you're a person that has any interest in creativity, whether appreciating it or making it, which I know you are, otherwise you would not be listening to these words this far into this podcast.
Totally.
But for everything that we just said, like it's you might not like it, you might not enjoy it, but if you're set up in the same way that Nate, that you set me up, which is to explain the context of it before hearing it, to understand that this is not random, that somebody made this way, then check it out. Like, it just makes you think. it just makes you sort of reevaluate and think differently about what you do.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. I would. What about you? Would you recommend TMR?
I absolutely would. I absolutely would. For all the reasons we've illustrated the last however long this goddamn podcast is, it's going to be a long one.
Our longest
but you know
one.
what? This is a long album, so it's fitting that it's a long episode. So it's
Double album, double podcast.
Totally. I absolutely would. You know, it's very daunting if you're even like somewhat familiar with what this album sounds like. It's a very daunting ask to even listen to it all the way through. Right? That's a big ask.
Right, yeah. In one go. Yep. That's
a big ask of any listener, right? And we're asking a lot of you to even listen to this at all, right? You're going to have like your body is going to like reject this. Like the white blood cells that make up your ears are going to come in and they're going to go, nope, get this out. This is fucking nightmare. This is nightmare fuel. I hate this. Like, right? You have to fight through that shit if you're going to listen to this. Like you fight through that shit, listen to it twice. Listen to it 3 times. Listen to it 4 times, 5 times. I cannot wait to listen to this again. I will be listening to it this week. I already know.
And normally when we do these discussions, once we get to this point where we have recorded the episode, it's like, all right, I'm not going to listen to it tomorrow.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not done.
I already know.
I'm not done with this one.
Listening to this.
Yeah, I'm not done with this one. I can't wait to dive into it a little bit more. And so yeah, I mean, I would challenge yourself. Challenge yourself as a creative person, as a listener of music, as someone who indulges in music. Like, challenging things are good for you. It's good to be challenged. It's good to be faced with something that you look at as a problem. It might not be a problem. It might just be the way you're looking at it, right?
Yeah, something that you're going to need to figure out a way around.
Yeah.
Like, to put yourself in that kind of a position where like, okay, I have to come up with a solution here.
Yeah. And you'll find it. You'll find it, and it's going to be different from mine and different from Brandon's, way of finding like how and why they might have liked this album. But yeah, I mean...
Yeah. And that's hard to find. Like it really makes me, just hearing you say that makes me realize, like, I don't even know the last time that I did really try to listen to something and give myself kind of like a musical challenge like this to listen to this, you know, like you're right. Like it is healthy. It's a thing to do. It's a thing that, you know, has growth keep happening. And
totally.
I'm like, fuck, when was the last time? Like I can feel the invigoration of having grown and having learned something, but it makes me realize like I could do that a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
I really just kind of just keep listening to what I already like.
Yeah.
a lot. You know?
It almost kind of starts, it almost feels like this is some kind of insane, like foreign delicacy food that is like fermented and like rotted or something, but people love it. Yeah. They love it. You know, somebody loves this, and it's been around for a long time now, and it has staying power. So like, it honestly is me. It is me. It's me. If I don't like it, it is probably more me. It says more about me than it says anything about this piece of work, right? So
yeah, that's interesting.
Or this food in this analogy, but
that's interesting.
So yeah, I would totally recommend it. It's rad. I'm sure. If you've heard it, I'm sure you're probably thinking we're full of shit and this is like an April Fool's joke, you know, that we're telling you that this is awesome. But like, I'm totally being genuine. Like, I love this record.
For real. Listen to it again if you don't get it yet.
Yeah. And on that note, Brandon, I'm excited to go to the Patreon zone with you. That's what we call it. We call it the Patreon zone around here. Over on Patreon, we have bonus episodes, full bonus episodes where we're going to continue a little bit of our conversation with Trout Mask, although I feel like we really hit on everything we wanted to say about this. Patreon.com/BlackMarketDub. You can find that episode. We're also going to pick the next record that we're going to cover over there on Patreon.
It's my turn.
It's Brandon's turn. I have no idea what he's going to do. We haven't talked about it at all, so I'm very excited to hear what you're going to do. But please go over to Patreon, support us over there. $5 a month. It'll make a huge difference. Plus, you'll get a bunch of free bonus content and some insight into like our other creative projects with music and all that. You can also find this on YouTube, as on our YouTube channel as a video, and wherever you listen to podcasts, you should be able to find Spotify, Apple Music, all that good stuff. You should be able to find this as a podcast as well. So thank you, listeners, for going on this voyage.
Yeah. We are also a band.
Well, that's true.
And
yes.
all the music that's featured in this episode, and all of our other music is available to stream for free at on Bandcamp at blackmarketdub.bandcamp.com.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Brandon.
Yes, you're welcome. Reggae music.
Yes. Doesn't sound like Trout Mask. We promise.
Not at all. At least not yet. We'll see what we make next. Now that we've heard this.
Yeah. All right. Let's wrap this shit up.
Well, remember everybody, sugar and spikes and everything nice and crazy. That's what little worlds are made of, lady. Goodbye.
Bye.